Welcome back, guys. I hope you're having a terrific day. If you didn't watch my video last week about transitioning from photography to cinematography, you can click the link up there to go and watch it because this is a sequel to that particular video. So let's assume that you made the transition and now you are full-time or full-fledged or maybe a part-time, or you're just dipping your toes into cinematography. How do you make banger videos? I mean, last week I sort of talked about some things to expect, but this time around we're sort of going to dive into how to make banger videos, or what you might see in every banger video out there. Be it movies, commercials, documentaries, interviews, all these things have something in common. And in this video, we're going to learn about the 5 C's of cinematography. Welcome back, this is Joshua Cleopas. Let's get going to a brand new video. So like I always say, video has a lot of moving parts. From the lights, to the sound, to the camera, to the lenses, to the tripods and the gimbals. There's so many things happening, right? But there are some few things that are very consistent throughout every single video you might watch online or in the cinema on the big screens. So in this video, I'm going to sort of talk about a specific aspect of cinema or video that we call the 5 C's of cinematography. And these are cutting, continuity, close-up, camera angles, and composition. In no particular order, we're going to talk about all these 5 things and how they motivate or inspire you to be creative and also grab the attention of your audience. These techniques, or tools you might call them, are things that most cinematographers use without even realizing it, especially if you're starting. So in this video, we're going to sort of talk about all these little things and sort of break them up so you can apply the techniques to your next project and make your videos look a tad bit better or a whole lot different depending on how well you implement it. So starting from the first one is, in no particular order, the first thing I'll talk about will be camera angles. I will describe camera angles as the direction in which the lens is pointing or the direction in which the camera is facing, whether to a subject or to the background. You might not know it, but camera angles really dictate how we feel about what we're looking at. A typical example is if you point the camera at somebody from below the eye level, the person immediately becomes very big and mighty and strong. Cinema will use this to shoot giants and people, even regular people, to make them look authoritative or put them in power as opposed to the subject next to them. On this flip side, when I put the camera a bit above the eye level, now whoever I'm looking at becomes really little or really small. It'll feel like I'm now the bigger person, or whoever's looking through the lens is the bigger person, and the person at the end of the lens becomes the smaller person. So just by reducing the angle of the camera to the floor, the person in front of the lens becomes much bigger and much taller. And just by increasing the height of the camera and angling it down, the person becomes smaller and more meek and might appear to become really weak or frail. So this is used to create interest in the subject or the background. Depending on the angle that you use, you can either make someone appear to be closer to the camera or someone appear to be really far away from the camera, someone to appear really tiny or someone to appear really huge. So camera angles could be the go-to to sort of frame your shots. Some of the ways I've used camera angles in my career is when I'm trying to establish a shot or create some kind of interest, especially in wedding films or shooting spots and ads for organizations like schools and stuff like that. I usually try and make sure that my angle is really interesting and it pulls the subject into what I want them to look at. Especially when you're shooting a big background or shooting on a wider lens, the camera angle will really determine what's in focus or what people should be looking at. So I usually make sure that I'm going for the right camera angles to put whatever subject in frame, or rather make sure the subject catches the attention of the viewer. So you really can't underestimate what camera angles can do in your overall storytelling and making a banger video. There's a whole lot of things you can do with camera angles depending on how creative you are or how much information you know. So I recommend that you watch a lot of videos and pay attention to the angles of the camera, and also read a lot so you can find out what other techniques you can apply just using these camera angles. Now let's go on to the next thing, which I find very connected to camera angles, that is your cutting. So cutting in cinema, as in chopping different pieces of the video and using them for different things, can really strengthen the look and feel of your video. You have to sort of know when to cut, how to reposition these things into a nice sequence that when somebody's watching it, it feels good, it feels strong, and it doesn't feel disconnected, right? So you can't just be cutting at any single place you want. You have to cut to different things. For example, there's a really simple way that people cut videos, especially when they're editing with music, is they cut to the music. So you might be watching a video, and if you were a videographer or a cinematographer, you can easily notice the pattern within cuts, because people usually cut to a certain tempo. So you're watching the video, you're listening to the music, you notice that at every kick of the drum, there's a cut. At every multiple kicks of the drum, there are multiple cuts. That sort of makes people understand or sort of create a rhythm that will make the video look nice. Especially for videos that don't have a lot of talking heads, or videos that are just music throughout or a cinematic sequence, cutting to music could be one of the really nice ways, one of the seamless ways to sort of make a cut or transition to a different part of a clip. Another thing that makes cutting really important is it can also control the mood of the person watching the video. A typical example is when you're watching a sports or a high action sequence, you will notice that the cuts are a lot. You can be watching one fight scene and there are about 6 or 7 different cuts in the split of a minute. Like a punch, a dodge, a kick, a headbutt, all of these things will have different cuts. But if you're watching a very romantic novel or romantic movie or something like that, you notice that the cuts are very subtle and very long. It's almost as if they have to sort of do whatever they have to do before there's a cut. And when there's a cut, it's usually changing camera angles and stuff like that. So you can control the mood of a video, make it feel very energetic and fast by increasing the number of cuts within a specific sequence, or by slowing down the whole clip by reducing the amount of cuts in different sequences. And that's how you can use cutting to strengthen the overall coherence and storytelling of your video. And this will lead into the next thing, which I would say it's continuity. So whenever you're watching a video, your eyes are engaged and your ears are also engaged, right? That means you're paying attention. Continuity is one of those things you wouldn't know, but you will feel it. If something is wrong in a movie, you don't necessarily pick it up at the moment, right? You sort of have this feeling in the back of your mind that, something feels weird, something is wrong. And then your mind will then show you what was wrong. So somebody can't exit a frame on the left side and reappear in the next frame on the right side. It's not coherent, right? So the inconsistency is what's going to ruin your videos. And you see this in a lot of amateur videos where people are shooting, but they don't consider how their cutting has to be coherent, right? So that's what I call continuity. I would describe it as the fluidity of your cuts, where people can feel like whatever is going on is happening in a nice sequence, was happening seamlessly and doesn't feel disjointed. In my career, especially back then when I used to shoot a lot of weddings, I could realize I would just jump from the woman right to the groom, and it wasn't so coherent, right? Sometimes I could get away with it, and sometimes things could look so seamless. I'm like, how come this cut doesn't feel as heavy as the rest? That was like one of the first things I'd realized that I had a wrong cut, where you move a scene and it feels like there's a huge jump, like a jump cut. That's when you usually realize that there's little coherence between the previous cut and the next one. So usually try to create continuity by relating the subject in the previous frame to the subject in the next frame. Some people will do this by using sound, some people will do this by using color, some people will do this by repeating certain objects between the two frames. Although those objects might be at a different part or a different side of the whole storyline, those objects will be the thing that ties the two cuts together so you don't feel the cut. So these are some of the things you can sort of read on, experiment on, watch videos and try and notice how they move between scenes and how they join conversations and stuff like that. One other example I can give you is when you're shooting interviews and you sort of want to create continuity, you sort of can't shoot on two sides of the interview, where you can't put one camera on the left and one camera on the right. There's something they call the 180 rule, where both cameras have to be shooting on one side of the frame to keep everything coherent and continuous, right? So you really have to know what you're doing before you break any rule. Continuity is one of the most important things in every filmmaking process. If you're not careful, you might finish shooting a really nice sequence, a good cutting system, really nice camera angles, and people will feel disjointed very straight away and you lose your interest. The next thing on the list is close-ups. There are different types of closing up on the scene. You can get extreme close-up, the medium close-up, but it's really important that you get to master what close-ups can do. They are not only to sort of zoom in for you to see your subject clearly, it's something that can also really propel the impact or the presence of a subject inside the shot. It really makes the audience connect to the characters in a different way by making them appearing very intimate to the audience or very disconnected. A typical example is you can watch a movie and when somebody is telling a lie, the camera will be right up on their face. So you can notice the movements of their eyes and how timid they are or how scared they are telling the lie. At the same time, when someone is trying to show conviction or strength, the camera will just zoom in on their face. You can see their anger. The one person that comes to mind who really uses camera angles to tell a character story is when you're watching an X-Men film and Wolverine shows up. It's always a close-up where Wolverine is angry, has his claws up, so you can feel whatever's happening on his face. That way the audience can really connect with what's going on. So how close the camera is to a subject and how far away it is can really tell you what's important and what's not, what you should look at and what you shouldn't look at, the emotional connection between the viewers and the characters. All these things can be controlled by putting somebody really close to the lens or really far away from the lens, right? So I would encourage you that you watch other films, pay attention to the cutting, to the continuity, to the close-ups, to see how whichever videographer or cinematographer is sort of telling their story by combining these top 3. And the last thing on the list is composition, right? Composition is sort of like the biggest umbrella because you can tuck every single thing under composition, but it also deserves its own scope. So let's talk about that. So I would describe composition as the unique framing that a cinematographer would give a certain view that the audience is seeing. So you can have camera angles as part of composition. You can have your continuity as part of the composition. You can have your cutting also match your composition. And you can also have your close-ups match your compositions. So compositions are one of those things that you would be using throughout. It's there, but it's not there. You will feel it when it's wrong, and you know that it's right whenever you see the frame that, oh my God, this has a nice composition. A lot of cinematographers use composition to establish themselves in a really grandeur way that when you see their shots, even if it's across multiple films, you can have a feeling that this composition is definitely by this person. So one of the directors whose work I can definitely identify just by composition is Zack Snyder. When you watch something like 300 Spartans or Justice League or something like that, and you see the way he will shoot right below the eye level, which again is him applying camera angles to sort of make Superman look big or make the main character from 300 look strong. Those superhero landing scenes or where the whole team is trying to fight the enemy, like you see the way he will position them right in the angle of incident, so everything looks really, really powerful, yet you don't really know what's happening. Yeah, that's all composition. Or when you're watching a romantic movie and the guy and the girl have put their heads together and they're just about to kiss, and right before they kiss, you can see something happening in the area between their necks, like a triangle. Composition. So composition is everywhere. It's in every single cinema sequence. It's in every single video, even weddings, even something that's boring as interviews. It has composition. Rule of thirds is one example of composition. And putting somebody in the center of a frame is another example of composition. I really can't stress how important composition is. And right now, I would encourage you guys to go out there and sort of explore what you can do with all these 5 C's. From the camera angles, to the cutting, to the continuity, to the close-ups, and all tying everything down to making sure that your composition is really strong and powerful. And I promise you, if you apply all these to your videos, no matter the context of video you're shooting, it will be a banger, right? It will definitely be a banger. But there's more to it. There's always more to cinema than meets the eye. So in other videos, I'm going to explore other things like your sound, your color grading, your color correcting, your storyboarding, and even the scripting of your videos. All these things contribute. But for now, the 5 C's of cinematography are some of the things you should really pay attention to improve the overall feel of your videos. I'm going to help you out by putting some things in the description that you can go and read on the 5 C's on cinematography and how you can apply them. And of course, these are just guidelines. They are not strict rules, but you can always apply your own versions to it or twist and match and mix and match these things to create your own unique style when you're telling stories or making videos. It's been awesome once again making another video on video and cinematography and all that. I'll be adding more to it in the mix. This is like a little series on getting started in making videos or producing videos. So I'm going to be making a lot. Like I said, the first video in this series was switching from photography to cinematography. If you didn't watch that, you can check it out in the link up here and you watch it. And after that, you can come and watch this video. And the next one will probably be on music and sound design and audio. That's where I talk about some of the tools and techniques that I use to record sound, especially the kind of microphones I use. Right now, I'm using the Deity microphone, which sounds really, really good as compared to the other one I had before, which was a Panasonic boom mic. This microphone sounds really good. So we're going to talk about all that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I would appreciate it if you share this with people who are trying to start out fresh or people who would love to know this kind of content. Thank you guys so much for spending your time on this video, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.